What's up, everyone? This is Cromulent George. I'm here just before the episode starts to give you a quick heads up. This week, Dave and I were plagued with all kinds of tech problems. You may have seen my Twitter post that I put out there. On Tuesday, this guy was a stupid guy. He forgot to do a test run just before the episode started recording and found out that I muted Dave the whole way through. Now, some people might say that's an improvement. I wouldn't. I'm not one of those people. We went to re-record on Thursday, and what we thought would be a quicker episode, which the original clocked in at nearly 2 hours, what we thought was going to be a quicker episode because we already had our points that we knew we were going to raise and bring up, ended up taking us about 2.5, nearly 3 hours to record because throughout the system just decided it wasn't going to play ball. So if things look a little bit cut or a little bit less smooth than normal around certain areas, please do bear with us. It's something that Dave and I are looking into all kinds of alternatives of how we record and methods that I'm using to record. This is something that's very new for me, and I'm using technology. I'm not using one of these pay-for sites where it does it all nicely for you in a browser. It's all going to be part and parcel of learning for me. So thank you for bearing with us. Now, enjoy the episode. Ladies, gentlemen, and everyone in between, welcome to This is a Revolution, your weekly dose of RevPro goodness. I'm George. This is the man you all know. This is Dave. How you doing, my friend?
Alright, mate, alright. We are right at the end of the school term, and I am absolutely ready for a rest. So, all good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, all good, mate. It's been a long week. Summer has finally hit, and it just makes an old man like me tired. So it's been a busy week at work and whatnot, and ready to chat some RevPro goodness with you again, my friend. For the people, just letting you in on a little thing, I'm an idiot, and I forgot to do a proper sound check last time. So young Mr. Dave here is very happy to oblige me and come back on because I managed to mute him the entire time last time. So the great thing is we had a lot of content last time where we were just going and having a think. So if nothing else, we'll cut all that rubbish out for you and you'll get us at our best. Please don't judge us too harshly for that. But the one thing I have to say, Dave, I am a bit disappointed about was when you told me there was a chance that you would have some purple hair, as evidenced by your Instagram picture. And I jokingly said to Dave when we're recording, will this be here next week? And he was like, no, it'll be gone by then. I'm glad we're recording. And when I heard it didn't pick up Dave's sound, I was thinking, we might just get this, people. And I had a thumbnail all lined up with it, but he's scrubbing up all right, isn't he? He's scrubbing up fine.
Yeah, you know what? I was assured. So for the context here, I had a girl at school who was earlier in the year. She was getting into trouble more often than she should have been, and we did all the formal stuff. We, chat to her mum, come up with some strategies, help get her back on the straight and narrow, and then once she started to improve, I kind of made a little bit of a banter bet with her, which was, now you've started to improve, if you can go the whole rest of the year without getting in any trouble at all in maths, we'll do something daft. And she was like, can I dye your hair purple on sports day? I was like, yeah, sure, if that's what you want to do, that's cool. I mean, I'll be honest, and I've told her this, I didn't go a week, let alone the whole term. And I even said to her teacher last week, I was like, just, wind her up a bit this lesson. I'll be able to smooth it over with her mum. Her mum will understand. We won't do anything, we won't put her in detention. We'll just wind her up a bit, No, she saw through it. She's a good kid. And I've got to teach her all the next year as well. So there'll probably be loads of little side bets on, and I'll end up in all sorts of trouble. But yeah, so at school all day yesterday for sports day, I had purple hair and I was walking around holding a sign that said, don't make bets you can't win. And it was, all good banter. It's all washed out, fortunately, but it kind of looks really weird because it looks like I've got big purple stains around the side and the back of my head where it's shorter. And it's kind of like marked my scalp. And I just look like I've got a skin condition or something like that. But it'll come off. A few more scrubs, a few more showers.
Absolutely, mate. Well, good on you for doing that, and I think that's a sign of a good teacher there who knows how to have a bit of banter with the students and keep them on side. And hey, if that's all it's done to keep her on the straight and narrow, you've done a good thing there, my friend. So well done you on that. Right, Dave. Shall we just jump straight into these questions that we've already gone through once, but let's do it again for the people. Doing our bit for the people.
Yes, mate. I'll tell you
Excellent.
what, to be honest, I really enjoyed recording on Tuesday. It's now Thursday, and I'm more than happy to record again because a couple of things have changed in the world. A couple of bits of news have changed an answer or two, which has worked out quite nicely. And also, like, it's just a great fun podcast. I really enjoyed recording it. So this is something I think we've learned that we'll happily do again. With no RevPro show to review this week and no show to preview, we used it to do like a fans mailbag episode where people were sending questions. And first of all, thanks for sending in questions. And it was lovely to, like, I thought we'd get sort of like maybe half a dozen questions that we'd kind of, spend like 10 minutes on each one. And in the end, I think we ended up with like 15 questions and we only kind of plugged it a couple of times just to get some feedback from people, and boom, suddenly there's like loads of cool questions, stuff that I hadn't even thought about. So yeah, all good stuff, man.
Excellent. So what we're going to do, guys, is we've got our list, and Dave and I are just going to take turns asking each other questions. So on that one, Dave, Reagan Elite and Pete Quinlan both asked probably the most obvious question that we were going to get in this mailbag: who is going to who should replace Stephanie Vaquer?
Yeah, it was kind of inevitable, wasn't it? That was going to be the main talking point coming out of last week. I think it's quite interesting the fact that there's two questions there, isn't there? Who should and who will? And then also just like looking at the actual context of it, there's been a lot of backlash from fans in terms of her cancelling the date because she's signed WWE, and backlash for WWE kind of forcing her on to cancel dates and stuff like that. And I just feel like as wrestling fans, we can be very, very quick to judge and not always understand like everything that's going on, and also remember the fact that it's business and doesn't owe RevPro anything. WWE don't owe RevPro anything. They've given plenty of notice to get a replacement. It's not like they're doing it out of spite. She's already made her WWE debut, wrestling on a house show in Mexico earlier this week. So you're not gonna, these companies, when there's nothing for them to gain out of an agreement to send one of their wrestlers that they're paying out to another company, where the WWE core fan base in the US isn't going to be like following RevPro tremendously, they're not going to get anything out of it. And at the same time, she could get hurt, and then they've lost, money on their investment. And it's such a business way of looking at it. But I do feel like it's, the old kind of fashioned, like, wrestlers should fulfill their dates is like that's like a really easy thing to say. But when there's only like a small handful of companies in the world that can give you life-changing sums of money as guaranteed money, you kind of have to do what you have to do, don't you? Surely, I'm not sure of anybody who could get away with digging their heels in and saying no. And I don't think Steph Vaquer is in a position where she can, play hardball. It's, take the opportunity you've been given. Putting all that aside, who do I think should replace her? Who do I think will replace her? I don't think it will be a British woman. I don't think they'll do. I think Andy Corden made it quite clear in his Twitter question and answer last Friday that it's leaning on their good relationships with other companies to bring in somebody of an equal footing, of an equal standard. It's a big name, so it feels like they need a big name. And I know from like things that Andy said in the past on podcasts, if somebody cancels, he'll try and make it an even bigger get than what was the original, because he always tries to repay the fans when especially in this case where there's been like a month's notice here. I think it's going to be somebody from AEW. I feel like there's if you look at the AEW and Ring of Honor women's roster, there's a lot of people there, and there's not going to be many spaces for them on the All-In card. So there can definitely be space for somebody to come over. If you think we've got Toni Storm and Mariah May, that's a guaranteed match for All-In. I imagine that there will be Mercedes Moné and Britt Baker All-In. I also imagine that there could be a third match, which will either be like maybe on the pre-show or earlier on in the card, and there you could be looking at maybe Willow and Chris Statlander, or maybe something involving Saraya, as it's a big English show, and she's like the hometown girl for it. But that still leaves loads and loads of women who you can't imagine are going to be appearing, but would be a really big get, I think, for RevPro, like a Deonna Purrazzo, Thunder Rosa, Nyla Rose, Rio, Mercedes Martinez, Serena Deeb. Like there's so many there. Hikaru is a name that I've seen floated about a little bit. I think that would be she's with fans around the world, her and Rio. I think what I would like, I think of those options, Dani Luna versus Deonna Purrazzo would be one I'd love to see. Big Deonna Purrazzo fan, have been for a long time. I'd love to see that. I think that that's very possible. I also think that any one of those women that we've just named is completely possible. Yeah, to be honest, I'd be happy with absolutely any of them. I think if we are now thinking that this is going to be a Dani Luna title retention, you might then look at which of those women would Tony Khan be happy to send over and be defeated, and that might be where could be somebody like Mercedes Martinez, who is at her stage of her career and on her sort of like character arc in Ring of Honor and AEW. She could lose and it not harm what she's doing out there. Same with Nyla Rose, and possibly even Thunder Rosa as well, depending on what's next for her. So yeah, loads of possibilities. Happy with any of them. Gun to my head, I'd like it to be Deonna Purrazzo.
Yeah, nice. And you hit the nail on the head of how many different options there are and what we're looking at. I mean, yeah, you're right when you talk about Steph Vaquer and the comments online, because I happened to post about it and I just saw the numbers of how far Steph Vaquer's reach actually is. And hey, here's a spoiler. Why do you think we're going with the thumbnail that we've gone for this week's episode? Because it seems to be Steph Vaquer gets hits, and I've not seen posts of RevPro go wild like it. And look, much like Dave said, there's a litany of reasons there why it's disappointing, but we can't be talking about Steph Vaquer's screwed RevPro. They've done this, they've done that to RevPro. It sucks that we're not going to get a match with Dani. Could happen in NXT. That's what I'm saying. But at the same time, I'm happy for any wrestler who's ostensibly going to be working indies to cancel their dates because they're going to go and get guaranteed money week after week and be part of something bigger for their career. So a lot of love to Steph. Just gutted I didn't get to see her live. Who do I think would be the replacement? Well, when that got announced, straight away for me, there was one person that jumped out, and I'm not going to beat around the bush. It was Willow Nightingale. And I think there was Dave and a couple of other people I texted straight away and said, this is the natural one for me. I feel like her and Dani, they're not your typical women's wrestlers in terms of physiques, and they're both strong wrestlers. And I think that could be quite an interesting matchup between the two of them. I think a lot of people looking at the tweets that are out there, you've got a lot of people who are understanding of the situation, but a lot of people not pissed at RevPro, but they're just pissed about the situation. And listening to the A Squared podcast, the one thing that I found with Andy Quilden is that even when someone pulls out, even if he's already got your ticket money, he wants to make out that he can deliver you something as good, if not even better. He really wants to make it up when someone does have to pull out for some reason. So I think AEW as well. My thought is that it's Willow Nightingale, but we see some kind of shenanigans which will either lead into their match at Wembley with Chris Statlander or for All Out, because that's only a week and a bit afterwards, I believe. I know that because I couldn't work out why I had the Monday booked off of work, and clearly it was so that I could spend a day watching the pay-per-view. But I actually found out it's on well, it says Saturday, but I think I might be Saturday in America, so that's why I booked the Monday off work. But yeah, that's the one I think it would be. I am not like disappointed if it's any one of the ones you've mentioned, but it could still be at this stage. It could still be someone from CMLL. It could be someone from Stardom. All of that, because Andy did say he's reaching out to his partners, which is what makes me think it's not going to be. And part of me just thinks that him and Tony want to do a make good on this, and it'd be nice if we got someone from AEW there.
Yeah, I mean, it's. Do you remember when Southside were going to do their last ever show, and they had a few WWE names booked for it, and then WWE pulled them from the show, and in response, Sean Spears came over and MJF came over, and it was right at the start of AEW, and it was great PR for AEW. I'm sure that's not the only reason they did it. But as a consequence, it was really good for AEW that, WWE have kind of negatively affected a British independent promotion that's quite beloved, and Tony Khan and AEW have stepped in by saving the day at the last minute. Mm-hmm. There's PR that could come out of this of a similar vein, and I'm sure there's lots of people that will happily write that narrative and write AEW to be, really good guys for doing it. And don't get me wrong, they deserve it, because this would be Tony Khan like scratching Andy Gordon's back, helping out in a time of need. But again, it's just testament to RevPro and the good relationships that they've got. I wouldn't be surprised at all if it was somebody from another company. I've kind of exclusively kept it to AEW, thinking that there's going to be a lot of talent already in the UK for that weekend anyway, because I would imagine a lot of the wrestlers, even if they're not booked on the card, would still come over and come to the show and be backstage and take it all in and use it as a nice weekend in London. And just from my own kind of familiarity with the products, so that's kind of what took me there. Great questions. So thanks Pete Quinn and Regan Elite, who both sent in very similar questions along the line. And the next question ties nicely from Foster's Needle. She asked, what next for the Undisputed British Women's Championship? And like on first read, I was sort of like, okay, as in what's next for the championship match? And then it was when kind of like George and I were talking, and we were like, well, actually, who do you think was going to win in the original match? Was Danny going to retain, or were we going to get a new champion in Stephanie Vaquer? And I certainly believed that Stephanie Vaquer was going to win that match. One, I feel like Danny's run, although it's got loads of legs still in it, it could do, has been a really solid run already. So there's no harm in change. Stephanie Vaquer is super hot at the moment, and we know, that's obviously led to her going to WWE. But before that transpired, before that happened, we have the opportunity to put the RevPro Women's Championship on someone who's got a lot of eyes on her. You said about like the tweet for her getting loads and loads of comments. Something that I noticed was so like Mark Ashley Films makes a lot of stuff for RevPro on Instagram from filming that he does at shows. And it's always interesting looking at the numbers, and you can really see like who's got that kind of social media drawing power. Like a perfect example is, do you remember before High Stakes? Before Uprising last year, there was Gabe Kidd and Will Ospreay had a scrap at the meet and greet.
Yeah, I remember that.
That video did ridiculous numbers, like absolutely ridiculous numbers, over 100,000 views, which for a RevPro Instagram reel is massive. Like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times what some of the other reels do. And that's like Ospreay. Ospreay's got that drawing power. But you also see it when some like the odd other person. You're like, ooh, they've done big numbers, but it tends to be sort of like the odd big name import who's got some like name value. But Stephanie Vaquer's videos like really, really high numbers on everything. She has got a lot of support. There's a lot of people that seem to be really into her, and for that reason, it felt like a possibility that they'd put the title on her. And then the one for me that really kind of got me was the fact that they'd already announced her for the 2 Berlin shows. Mm-hmm. And that's very similar to what happened with GYV and Barcelona before was it the Revolution Rumble that they won that? Yeah, Revolution Rumble was when they beat Subculture, wasn't it? And they'd been announced for the Barcelona tour. They won the titles. They took the titles to Barcelona. All the champions went to Barcelona. And this felt like a little bit of a kind of foreshadowing of the fact that Stephanie Vaquer was going to win the women's championship. She's going to take it with her to Berlin. Like, she's going to be like a draw for those shows. So now that that's not obviously not going to happen. That was ever going to happen. We all know. Definitely can't happen now. Where do I see that championship going? So for me, it's got to be somebody from the Cutthroat Collective, to take the belt, because they're like the hottest thing in RevPro at the moment. I think they're up there with everything that's happening with Oku and Jacobs, everything that's happening with like the potential for renewing the Destination Everywhere Young Guns feud. And for the first time ever, I think it's safe to say, I know I've not been around for the whole of the RevPro story, but through following it online and now being sort of like as a regular attendee as you can possibly be there, for the first time ever, it feels like there's more than just a women's championship, but there's a women's division. And so in order to really kind of capture that, put the belt on somebody from that big hill stable, because then you've got another 6 months of story, a year's worth of story that can come out of it. And, the beauty of having a stable like that, got so much power, is you have somebody from that group carry the belt, somebody win it back on the babyface side, and then a different person from the group could take the title back, and you can have this long-term stable without it ever feeling stale. Like if you look at, say, like the Inner Circle from AEW, Jericho held the title, but you never really felt that like Jake Hager or Sammy Guevara or Santana or Ortiz were going to be the AEW World Champion. But with this collective, Nina Samuels could be champion, Lizzie Evo could be champion, Sadie Blaze could be champion, Alex Windsor could be champion, and Sapphire Reed 100% could be champion in sort of like a year's time. I mean, she could be now, of course she could be, because she's absolutely mint, but I feel like there's lots more I'd like to do with her to build her up, because it feels like she is sort of Alex Windsor's kind of apprentice, was the vibe I got from the last. So for me, I'd go Nina Samuels first, because she's got a lot of kind of name power, and she is like the belt collector. That's like her thing across all the other companies. So why not like tag into that? And then maybe the next time around, it could be either Alex for the second time, or I would rather see it go to Lizzie. I think Lizzie's probably the one that has... I'd seen Mercedes Blaze before, always enjoyed her. I'd seen Sapphire Reed, always enjoyed her. I was aware of Nina Samuels from NXT UK. Obviously, Alex, we know really, really well. But Lizzie was one where I'd always heard the name and I'd heard good things, but I'd never seen her wrestle. And I was always excited for the time when it would happen, to see if I agreed with people that had bigged her up a lot to me. And 100% I'm in agreement. Like, the woman is so good. Her work is so snug, and how she doesn't decapitate people with those knee strikes, because that looks exactly like what is happening, always gets me. So for me, I would go Nina Samuels as the next champion, and Kanji to be the babyface, to be the first one to take that belt away from the Cutthroat Collective and take a chink out of them, with somebody from the collective, probably Lizzie, taking it off of Kanji down the line. Just feels like there's so much they could do with this that I'm excited for.
Yeah, I'm with you on all of that. So much like you said, when it came out, it was like, okay, yeah, I think Steph Vaquer is going to beat Danny. Danny will go on to do other things, because Danny's got TNA, and Like at the time, maybe there was these thoughts of how much could she be here, how much did TNA need her. We don't know what TNA's got coming up either, and especially with this stuff with WWE, I could also sense like a reluctance in the immediate to go, okay, let's take this and put on someone who can one elevate that belt even higher. No disrespect to Danny, but what Steph's eyes can bring to that, it's just something else. So yeah, that got me thinking. I think Danny's going to retain. I think that's the unless they get one of these ladies and Tony says, yeah, you can do with them what you're going to do with Steph Vaquer for a few weeks, which I don't see happening. Then we take that, and yeah, the Cutthroat Collective is the way to go. I think we're getting the big 5-on-5 match, and I think they are winning. I think we are way too early in their story to even consider the breaking up. Because for me, the 5 versus 5 almost felt a little bit like that's when you kind of end it. But then actually, the more I've thought about it, the more you go with the Shield. And that was kind of who I was using the analogies of a few weeks ago, was that together they are a lot stronger. And individually, maybe need a bit more help with getting the win over the line sometimes. I think coming out of this, they're going to get a big win and they're going to look even more dominant in singles. And I think that's where you build them now is that, hey, these guys are big and strong as a group, but as singles, they're just as strong. And like you, I think I'd go with Nina Samuels. When the group first debuted, even though there wasn't a leader, and I think this might be because Nina was the talker of the group and she just had a bit more stature in terms of longevity. Nina felt like the leader to me, even if it wasn't a de facto leader, and the same way that Alex feels the same as the leader now. But I definitely feel like there's like you've got them all on a level playing field, and she's just up there a little bit more because of her experience, what she's achieved in RevPro. So that's the only reason I think that. I am with you that I think Sapphire Reed could absolutely run with the title now. I just think it's a bit too early to do it. I don't think you waste it. When I say waste it, there's a lot more that you can do before you put on Sapphire. And I think just let her grow. Yeah. Let her continue doing what she's doing. She's great with it. You don't need to put the title on her yet. Lizzie Evo was the one for me that I think I've told this story before. She worked me so well that I legitimately just didn't like her. And I convinced myself in every metric, don't like her. And that's because she did her job properly. Let's be honest, right? And I've even told her that. And I was like, that's what you did to me for a while. And when I first saw her, I thought, yeah, she's okay, right? Like nothing, for me, there was nothing like to write home about. It was very good at what she did, but didn't grab me in any way. In that sort of, I think it's year and a half since then, the growth that I've seen and what she can do in the ring now is night and day. Absolutely night and day. And she has got a level of viciousness that her and Sapphire both have, but she's added that level of viciousness. Like you said, the hard-hitting strikes, which I never saw the first time. I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, I can see what she's about. And when I was at Progress in April, end of April, was it bank holiday or May, whenever it was anyway, the super strong style, she was in a ladder match with Nina, Kanji as well, and it was just like great what they were doing, and she more than played her part. She had that viciousness side to her. So yeah, I would like to see it go to Nina, then like you on to Kanji, then probably on to Lizzie. What I would like is I don't necessarily want them to go down the trope of dissension in the ranks and Alex is jealous, but I'd like to see the seeds sown for that a little bit, and then maybe do something different. Don't go, oh, they have to break up. Maybe they can convince Alex to be on side, but I'm interested to see where the story's going. I think we're way too early in the Cutthroat Collective's debut to even think about ending it, and I just want to see more. They are, for me, the highlight I want to see of what gets booked for them on the shows. Like, I love what they're doing with Oku, and I love what they're doing with Luke Jacobs, right? That is amazing. But this is where my attention is every time on what the Cutthroat Collective do.
Yeah, me too, man. Absolutely. I think my fear that it will end sooner rather than later probably wouldn't be the case if it was the top 5 men in the company. I think it is just like being that little bit tentative of the idea that the women are being presented better than they've ever been presented before, and it'd be just being a little bit tentative of like, is this a long-term thing, or is this a temporary thing? And I want to have faith that it's a long-term thing, and I do have faith because I've never had reason not to. I'm like an absolute RevPro mark for all organic reasons. And the thing that gets me is like, RevPro do long-term storytelling. That's the best thing they do. That is what they're best at. Like, there's a reason why we're all in love with the Oku Jacobs, Oku RKJ, Oku Mills, RKJ and Jacobs, Mills and Jacobs, now JJ Gow and Jacobs. You've got all these like long-term feuds where every single time they wrestle, it adds a new episode to their saga. Nothing gets forgotten about. Andy Quilton is clearly such a details guy and knows exactly what he's doing. So I want him to do that with this women's group with the same level of detail that he does with the men, because he's got just a talented group of people. And also, there's so much fun to be had with it. I really like the idea that over time, the group can evolve. People can leave, other people can join, but like over long term, like over the next, year and a half, 2 years of shows, let it become stale before breaking it up, as opposed to breaking it up before you think it gets stale, because the chances are it's not going to get stale for a really, really, really long time, because there's too many good, talented people there. And everything they've done so far has been absolutely cracking. So thank you very much to
Dave. Before we move on to the next question, one of the things that you mentioned to me last time was the amount of women that have been used since this. You had a stat on that. Yeah. Would you mind just repeating it? Because I thought that was a really interesting thing you picked up on.
Yeah. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah, so I was doing my due diligence and a bit of research before I wrote an article for DaveTheMark.com, which was on how the Cutthroat Collective has benefited RevPro in all manner of ways. And one of the things that I found really interesting is if you look at the first, from January to the end of May, bearing in mind the Cutthroat Collective debuted at the start of June. So for the 5 months where there was no CTC in RevPro, the number of women's matches, the number of different women booked for those matches, and then you look at the number of women that were booked for the month of June, and the number of women's matches in effectively the 5 shows that occurred throughout June and early July. And what you see is the wealth of talent has massively increased. You've got a whole load new women being utilised. You've got tag matches and multi-woman matches where before everything was a singles match. You've got 2 free matches on a card as opposed to the one. And the one that really got me was it's almost identically the same. You've got almost the exact same number of matches in 1 month of RevPro shows, women's matches, as there were in the first 5 months of the year. And there's even more women having been used in that month than had been used in the total of the other 5 months, which is just absolutely nuts. And it just goes to show like how much this is benefiting so many people.
I think it's great, and it's really cool what you just said there, and kind of how you've been able to really tell us the numbers behind that, because a lot of us talk about RevPro and we talk about the buzz of RevPro coming to the biggest show of the year, and aside from the main title, the biggest story we've got going in is this group of women. Not necessarily even the women's title, this story with the women. So it's clearly drawing people into it. They're invested. Much like you, I trust in Andy. If Andy says he's going to do something and it work, I give him the benefit of the doubt because he's proven me right so many times. I really hope this is the time when we really start to see women being invested in RevPro. I'm not saying they weren't before, but certainly not. They weren't presented to the level that they're being presented now. Long may it continue, because we have a great group of women here who are showing what they can do on the UK scene, not just in RevPro, but across lots of different promotions. They're invariably, with the way that things are going in America and companies looking for talent and looking for the best talent and location, really not putting them off. There is going to be a lot of people where now are more susceptible to people being taken from them by WWE, TNA, all of that stuff. This gives us a really good opportunity to diversify that roster a bit more and hopefully build into a great Queen of the Ring. So yeah, Imposter's Needle, thank you for that question. That was a really good one to kind of just start thinking about, especially with Steph Vaquer pulling out. So moving on to the next one then from Shibrother. Dave, who do you think the other 4 contestants in the Cruiserweight Scramble will be?
Okay, so I'm in a position where I'm so confident that the 4 people I'm about to say are correct that I can't imagine it being anything else. Which is completely stupid, because I get like this about a lot of things and I end up being completely wrong and I end up going down the wrong tree at all. But for me, like, I feel like there's loads of things pointing in this direction. So you've got Will Caven and you've got Neon. We know there's going to be 4 more people. We know that each person is going to have to qualify for this scramble match. So they're going to have to appear for RevPro twice. Once between now and the anniversary show, and then obviously at the anniversary show. So what shows have we got? We've got Live in Coventry, which already has half of its card announced.
Yeah.
And I feel like if they were going to put like a really big name on that card, they would have done so to get the tickets sold, because that's an untapped market. They've only ever run 1 Coventry show before. It was like, it wasn't absolutely full. I'm sure it did well as a first time event, but it wasn't, jam packed for people. It's a big venue. They can fit more people in, certainly. Bear in mind this is the venue that Impact Wrestling ran last year. You've then got the 1865 show in Southampton, but that is literally the week before the Copper Box. So although the 1865 gets names, and you could have a big name there, would you want a big name being announced like just a few days, 6 days before the Copper Box show? And then you got the Summer Sizzler, the big York Hall show, and really interestingly, like literally, I remember I copied and pasted Andy's tweet and texted when he did it on Friday, just being like eye emojis, because he said that Summer Sizzler had come about because there was an opportunity to do something that was too good to not do. Something along those lines. That's not verbatim, but that was along those lines. Obviously, we know that Summer Sizzler was never in the original plans for the year. The 11th of August was meant to be a Southampton show. There wasn't meant to be a show the week before the Copper Box, and I'm sure that was by design, because I remember Andy working himself into the ground last year to get it all together. So give himself that week without a show. And, why would you run York Hall 13 days before you run the Copper Box? Like that makes no sense to do from a strategic point of view, but it does make sense in a reactive point of view. So you then look at, well, what's happened in the last month or two since Summer Sizzler was since the Southampton date was first moved, because that's effectively them giving the indication something's happening.
Yeah.
And for me, it's the fact that a former RevPro wrestler who wrestled a lot for RevPro in the Cruiserweight division is now available for bookings, and that's Ricochet. So I think Ricochet will wrestle at the Summer Sizzler, and that will be a big, and Andy says on the 29th of July, they're going to announce the whole card. I think people are going to be buying tickets because they're going to look at it and be like, oh, that's a strong card. What? There's Ricochet. Ricochet versus who? Like, that's amazing. Ricochet gets in there, and then you've got the opportunity to, Leon Slater can beat somebody at Summer Sizzler to get his place in the match. Jordan Breaks can beat somebody in Coventry. Cameron Kai can beat somebody in Southampton. And then you've got Neon, Will Caven, Cameron Kai, Leon Slater, Jordan Breaks, 5 of the, 4 of basically the 4 wrestlers in your cruiserweight division that aren't Robbie X, who we now know isn't available for the Copper Box at all because he'll be wrestling CMLL the night before. So you've got these 4 wrestlers that are pretty much the cruiserweight division at this point, with Neon, who is the imported champion and the big name, where you've got that kind of look at the card of last year and you had Shibata and you had ELP and people like that, where you were like, there's a big name in a mid-card match. That's what Ricochet can bring this time. And if he is also doing anything else that weekend at Wembley, perhaps, he's in a multi-man match. He's in a multi-man match where he doesn't need to, Orange Cassidy was in a multi-man match and didn't, wrestled a very safe performance where you never felt like the lad was going to get hurt. I know Ricochet's style is very different to Orange Cassidy's, but I feel like he could definitely be the one exception to someone who works both shows. Or maybe he's not wrestling All In at all, but he's making a big appearance at All in which case there's absolutely no reason why he can't do this. So for me, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, it's funny because when we spoke about this, Dave and I have 3 very similar picks for this. So I have Leon, Cameron, and Jordan Breaks as well. No surprise, it just makes sense. All the journeys they're going on, it makes sense for them all to be there. And Jordan Breaks as the guy who lost the belt to Neon, that also makes sense. There's a story there. When we originally thought of this, I didn't think of Ricochet. I do think Ricochet will be there. I think Ricochet will be at Summer Sizzler. I've got a slightly out there pick, which will come up as a question later about my initial thought of what could this be that Andy's talking about for Summer Sizzler. But I do think Ricochet will also be at Summer Sizzler. I just don't think he'll be in this match. Dave laid out a lot of good reasons, and actually, he almost won me over, and I was almost going to go, Ricochet, put him in there, that's who it's going to be. I would not be surprised to see everything that Dave has said go down. But for some reason, when I saw this, the name that jumped up at first was Lio Rush. He's worked RevPro before. The guy, I've seen him in scramble matches, and maybe again that's clouded my judgment a little bit, but I've seen him in scramble matches. Very good in scramble matches. He's on a bit of a resurgence. His stuff that he's doing with New Japan. He's done a bit with AEW. He's clearly whatever he's been battling over the last couple of years, because the lad's been very open with battles that he's had with mental health, right? And I know that it's the done thing to talk about Lio Rush retiring again, but I really hope this is the run for him, because when I saw him in Portsmouth for RevPro, he looked to be having a blast of a time, and genuinely the 2 occasions I've seen him in the UK, I've met him both times, just a really sound lad, and I would love to see him on this card. I think there's a lot he could bring to this. Because we're probably not going to touch on it, I think the match that Ricochet has at the anniversary show, and yes, I think he'll be wrestling All In as well, and maybe TK will just be like, let's put him in a safe multi-man match, which is what you're suggesting there. But the match where I'm saying this because I'm trying to manifest it more than I think will actually happen is Ricochet versus Zazaya.
I thought you were going to say that. I was literally because I was kind of thinking, I wonder who he's going to pick, and then Zazaya's name just appeared in my head, and I was like, that's such a cool match.
Oh, that's the cheat code match, though. It's literally like you go, oh, who should go in this match? Zazaya, because the guy is having the match of the night everywhere he goes against everyone he goes against. So that would be what I'd like to see. I just want to see him in a great match as well. But yeah, that's who I think regarding the cruiserweight match. So fabulous! Thank you very much, Shibrata.
Loads of logic, man. Loads of logic.
Cool.
Cheers, man. Thank you ever so much. Yeah. Our next one comes from the Tea and Tights podcast. Great podcast. If you have not listened before, really lovely host and good chat talking about all European wrestling. So T and Tights have asked, who would we like to see entered in the J Cup and the Tag League, and who do we think will actually be entered?
So this was a really interesting one when we were discussing this last time, because we kind of started to go down this path of like who it could be, and then Dave mentioned a name, or I might have even mentioned it as I was thinking just halfway through, and Dave said he thought the same with one of them. My initial thought was this could be a really good opportunity to get like the three main partners, New Japan, AW, and CMLL, sending one entrant each, right? It solidifies those working relationships. It gets these people in. It helps Andy sell the shows, like gives you some names. And then when we were going through, the people that jumped out to me was someone from AEW, someone like a Vikingo, a Bandido, a Commander, someone who's got those lucha kind of roots there. That these family-friendly shows who of people who don't go all the time and go, oh my god, look at what they're doing. Like that does draw people in, as much as people would like to talk online about psychology, all that sort of stuff. At these shows, these family-friendly shows, the kids just want to see cool stuff happening. That's why when you do these shows, people like JJ Gale, Robbie X, all those guys, they get people into them. And I'm not saying that these guys are just flippy guys. That's it. They're not. But that draws people in, and people go away going, oh, do you remember that thing? I mean, my dad was the same on the way home when we went to Stevenage last time. So yeah, I think that those guys could be good. From New Japan, I would love to see someone like Ishimori. And why can I never remember his name? The guy that's in LIJ. Takahashi. You know what? Here's the weird thing. You think that I don't know him or anything, right? I love the guy, and I don't know why, but all I can ever have in my head now since finding out about Daryl the cat is Daryl. That is literally all it is. Like Takahashi's gone to one side now. I even looked at ordering one of the the Daryl plushes until I saw that it was about 60 quid, and I was like, no, not ordering that anymore. But yeah, it just gripped me. So I would love to see them. And then from CMLL, I think the one that I kind of, as I was going through, Mystico. Those would be the ones I would love to see. On the other side of it, from who we think, I think also you'll get your guys like your Cameron Kais, Jordan Breaks, those people that are really propping up the cruiserweight division. I think this will go a long way into pushing one of those guys into a winner spot. I could see Cameron Kai winning this if one of the imports doesn't win it. I think that would be a really good person to have win this. Again, he's going on this journey of like almost you're almost seeing this like meaner side of him coming out, this more confident, assured side with Leighton Buzzard on the side, like kind of dictating what he does, giving him the game plans. I would love to see that sort of thing happen. When we talk about the tag league, I think very differently about this, because the one that jumped into my head, at first about the copper box, and then I was like, oh, maybe tag league, was Motor City Machine Guns, because they seem to be taking indie bookings still, even though it's been reported that they were going to be with WWE, then they were going to be with AEW, but they're still taking indie bookings. And then the more I was kind of discussing it last time out with you, Dave, I was like, they're just not going to come to the 1865 and do a random match, not for the amount that they're going to cost, right? Unless they're just going, hey, let's just do this because it's something we want to tick off our bucket list. I don't think it's going to be as much as I'd like to think it would be. So I think that I would like to see RevPro really utilize what they've got and who they've got, because I think the tag scene now is becoming really good, but there's a lot of really interesting combinations. So my feelings for this were Destination Everywhere is going to be in it. If things are not as bad as maybe it's coming across with Ethan Allen, we said last time, we don't know if we're being worked. We don't know if this is real. We don't know if it's somewhere in between. I really hope at minimum it's somewhere in between, or fine, but just along those lines. That's if we can get them in the competition, that'd be good. Will Sunshine Machine be there? That is a genuine question. I think that by then things could have concluded. Have to get that dig in there for Dave. And then I think there's some really interesting combinations, because I think you said last time about that if they don't go one route, they can go this route. I won't kind of pick up on some of those. I'll let you say it. But some of the ones for me that I would like to see if they do go with Destination Everywhere, I'd love to see Mark Haskins come in, and I'd love to see him go alongside Chris Ridgway because, guys, if you could see the footage that we recorded last time of just Dave and I just basically being like, insert Randy Marsh gif here for the styles that Mark Haskins and
we absolutely
Ridgway
marked out over Mark Haskins, didn't we?
Yeah,
Absolutely
Dave,
marked out over Haskins.
I think what I'd like you to say is what you said last time about the fact of what you would do if Andy Quildan doesn't book Mark Haskins in RevPro.
So Haskins is one of these people where I've never got to see him live, but I've watched so much of his stuff through RevPro On Demand, and my kind of obsession with being a bit of a completionist. So I've gone back. I started in 2012. I've watched every single show on RevPro On Demand from start to finish. I'm currently in 2020. I've worked my way all the way up, and then I've watched loads of other bits periodically when I'm writing an article or for when I do This Week in RevPro History. So I've probably watched, even though I'm only at 2020, I started going to all the shows and watching them live on demand in 2022, and I've watched most of 2021 for This Week in RevPro History. So I've basically almost completed the whole thing at this stage. Mark Haskins is one of my favourite wrestlers to watch. Absolutely love the guy, but I've never got to see him live. But I'm also very much like a one club man. So, I support West Ham. I don't want to go and watch another football club because I watch West Ham. That's what I do. I go and watch RevPro. The number of times people are like, oh, you should come down and watch New Wave. You should come down and see Attack. You should go to a Progress show. And I'm just like, no, I'm just going to go to RevPro. Partly also, I think my wife would leave me. I genuinely think my wife would leave me if I go to any more wrestling shows than I already do. But if Andy Quildan does not book Mark Haskins in the next 12 months for a RevPro show, I am going to go to another company just once, just to watch Mark Haskins, because I want to see the guy before he calls it a day. I want to see him before, I don't want to run the risk of never getting to see him because he's gone full-time to America. I know he's got his American visa again. I want to see the guy in RevPro, but he's one person where I would be willing to go and watch another company to watch him just because he's too good for me to ever run the risk of missing out on, bearing in mind that he is wrestling so many other companies like IWN. I know that IWN just seems to have come to an end, but he was getting booked regularly in some really cool matches for IWN, and that's like 25 minutes from my house. Like Milton Keynes and Bedford's like literally down the road from each other. So really tempted with that. So Andy Quildan, if you listen to our podcast or if you stumble across this in any way online, please book Mark Haskins. I'd really, really like you to.
Absolutely. And what I said to, so when I saw Mark Haskins and Vicky Haskins at Progress, I literally said, I was like, mate, what do we need to do to get you in RevPro? And Vicky Haskins literally turned around to me straight away and said, you need to pin Andy Quildan down and tell him to book Mark Haskins. I was like, okay, fine. What I was just doing, Dave, while you were telling me that story, I was like, how many times have I seen Haskins? Because I don't think I've seen Mark Haskins anywhere near as much as he deserves to have been seen live, right? And I went through a stage of where I was like, oh, I'm not going to that show, or I'm not going to that show, because maybe the card didn't grab me as much. And this was before I was so invested into the product that I am now. Like, I'm properly all in on RevPro. But I've got this spreadsheet, and Dave knows I've got this spreadsheet, right? Because I'm really nerdy like this. I have a spreadsheet literally that details all of the shows I've ever been to. And what I'm going to do when I edit this is I'm just going to put a little bit on screen so you can see a little bit of my spreadsheet of kind of how nerdy this goes into. But while you were talking there, Dave, I thought, I know that I think I've only ever seen Haskins in RevPro once. Literally my second show. And that was teaming with Joel Redman, who actually runs the training school of the town that I'm in. And on Saturday night, we'll be performing literally, or the following week, round the corner from literally less than a 5-minute walk from my house. Yeah, and they were teaming against Hiroyoshi Tenzan and Satoshi Kojima. So,
Yeah, I've seen that match. I remember
yeah,
that.
Global Wars, Reading Leisure Centre. And I was like, and the funny thing is, there was a lot of people on that card. I think I've said before that I was like, I don't know who Naito is. Like, who's this Naito guy? Right. And I know that's people, they will be sitting there going, "Oh." And then I was like, oh, yeah, Okada's pretty good. I know he's good. Like, and then I was like, oh, this Tanahashi guy, he seems cool. So, but the team that I knew was this team because I was 18 years old, a little MLW mark when it was on the wrestling channel back in like 2002 when I was 18. And I was like, whoa, this is really cool. And that was probably my first foray where went away from like big screen WWE and I felt really cool because I was like, something a bit different. It was like, oh, they have rankings, they have all of this. Yeah, Kojima, getting to see him live was so cool. But I remember Haskins having the little CM Punk kind of look going on at the same time as well. So, yeah, please, Andy Quilton, please get Haskins into RevPro. But Dave, obviously, I said who I thought would be in both competitions. What about you, mate?
So I'm thinking about it a little bit more kind of in depthly than I did when we chatted on the podcast that never recorded. So there's going to be 8 people involved, I'd imagine, for both. So the J Cup will have eight people, 4 singles matches, and then the winners in a 4-way, and the tag league will have 2 blocks of 4 teams. So I'm gonna try and give who I think the 8 people would be and who I would like them to be within the realms of possibility.
Yeah, nice.
So I think for like the J Cup, I do like the idea of one person from each promotion. So I was thinking of you're gonna have like Will Caven, Robbie X, Leon Slater, Cameron Kai, Jordan Breaks. There's 5 that I think will be in the J Cup. So then you've got 3 more spaces, and I feel like you said Commander, and I feel like that's like one where it just ticks all the perfect boxes. Somebody that AEW I feel like would be very happy to let RevPro use. Someone that they'd be happy to let them use without him needing to win. Someone who would absolutely capture the imaginations of all the families at the show. And someone with a bit of name value, as seen on AEW television, all that jazz. Not that RevPro kind of do that, but, you get that. I was thinking of Titan from the New Japan and the CMLL side of things. Would be like a really good person to include. And also someone who could potentially win the tournament. Because my final person was Igor Blong, who I think really captured people's imaginations with his amazing effort against Robbie X in Southampton after the Revolution Rumble. But thinking about who could win the J Cup, it's always had, the early years of the J Cup with like Jushin Thunder Liger, Speedball Mike Bailey, like real big name winners to kind of establish it. Then you had sort of like Oku and Robbie X and Leon Slater all winning it as like big moments in their, solidifying their RevPro runs. I think it might be a little bit early for Cam. Not like because he's not good enough or anything like that, but simply because I feel like there's, in terms of him building up his like win-loss record, if you like, with Buzzard in his corner, the J Cup might come around too soon for that. I don't see Will Caven winning it. I don't see a heel winning it because I think it's definitely a cup in Stevenage, big crowd, where you want a babyface winner. Robbie has won it. Leon has won it. Jordan Breaks hasn't, and it could be really cool for Jordan Breaks. But Titan has got that name value where he could be, added to it, and I feel like that could work really well. So there's like my kind of predicted 8 for the J Cup. my prediction and what I would like from the tag league is very much what you were saying. I really want them to utilise what is there already. So I want Sunshine Machine, I want Greedy Souls, I want True and Lacey, I want Youngblood. So they're like 4 immediately. Will GYV still be the champions by then? And if so, do you want to include them in it? Maybe. And, you know, I'd love to see, I don't know what the situation with subculture would be around that time, but again, would be great to see them. But at the same time, I would like it to be freshened up. I don't want it to be exactly completely predictable. And that's where I want to see Oku and Zazaya, because I feel like it would be a great thing to not just like keep Oku busy in whatever happens after the copper box, but like when you think you can have Oku and Zazaya, you could have Mills and Ridgeway, who tagged together in Sheffield. It went brilliantly. Tagged together at the 229 and then fell out. Wrestled against each other in Sheffield, but then had a handshake at the end of it. They could definitely still be a team. And Young Guns. So then you've got the Destination Everywhere, Young Guns. You've got Zazaya's got this kind of rich history now as being a man who's beaten Oku and beaten Jacobs. If Jacobs wins the title at the Copper Box, you've got him as your champion in the tournament. If Oku retains, you've got him as your champion in the tournament. It feels like there's loads there. I'd love to see Golden Boy Santos and David Francisco as a part of it. And at this point, you're getting to the point where there's more than 8 teams there. There's 9 teams I've mentioned, but you know, take a pick of 8 of those. I would much happier see that than see, you know, like CPF were involved last year, Billington Bulldogs were involved last year, and that's, you know, I like both of those teams. I'd love to see both of those teams, but they're not people who have got like much. They're not already in RevPro, so therefore there's not as. It makes some of those matches a little bit more predictable. I'd like to have some, like, if you've got all those stars in there, it's really, really unpredictable, because, you know, Oku and Zazaya could lose all their matches. You know, absolutely they could lose all their matches because they're not a tag team.
Yeah.
You know, Greedy Souls can beat them, Sunshine Machine can beat them, True and Lacey can beat them, True and Lacey can cheat and beat anybody. Greedy Souls can convincingly beat anybody because, you know, they're like one of the best tag teams in Europe. Youngblood can convincingly beat anybody, but they can also lose because they're also youngsters. Like, all of the one of the beauties of tag team wrestling is any team can beat any team without the other team looking weak, because you can do, you know, you can isolate one person, work an injury angle. You can have one person cheating behind the referee's back, which leads to the other team winning. There's so many things you can do in a tag match because of the fact that you've got more people involved. I'm really, the more I talk about it, the more excited I am for the idea that we're going to get a J-Cup, a Queen of the Ring, and a tag league between Copperbox and Christmas. And it makes that period of the year really, really hot.
Yeah. I think, what you've said there about the tag league is great. And I mean, I think Dave Francisco and Golden Boy Santos are going to go in that spot that you've reserved for Sunshine Machine. But you've been really good there about what you've said with teams like the Billington Bulldogs and everything. Because the one thing that I felt with the tag league, so my first tag league as I watched along live last year, and I love the Billington Bulldogs, and True and Lacey were they were another new team to me, but they felt like the teams who were there to take the beat, right? They take the loss. Like, that's what they felt like. Now, if Zazaya and Oku lose, it's intrigue because they are established. They've got this place in RevPro, like, well, the world champion, if Oku retains, the world champion is just losing all the time. This guy who never loses in Zazaya is losing all the time. What is going on there? And does that then lead to tensions to get Zazaya Oku 3, the rubber match? Like, you've got that story you can play. Whereas with the Billington Bulldogs, you don't. Like, they were there to take a beating, which I loved it. I mean, I loved them. I thought they were great. But by the look of it as well, it looks like Tommy Billington's doing stuff in wrestling, but I think his brother is it Mark. I think it looks like from what I'm
Yeah.
seeing on social media, he's practicing for a boxing match or something. So I don't know if, even if they are a tag team anymore, or if he's going singles while he's doing that. But best of luck to him, whatever they do. I really loved watching them when they came over. True and Lacey for me were the success of last year's tournament, because I went from looking at them thinking, I was like, these are just two dudes that are like almost stuck in 2003. Like they had the pleather look and all that sort of stuff. And then I just, as they grew, and I was like, I really like them. I really want to boo them. And as we were
Yeah.
talking about things there, all I kept thinking was, what if they're the ones to beat Sunshine Machine? And look, guys, it sounds like I'm trying to rib Dave here, right? And I'm not. I mean, partly I am. But Dave and I have very different views on this, because Dave is a huge Sunshine Machine fan. I'm just not, as a team. They don't do it for me. But I think there's an interesting story there to be told there with them splitting up, which I know Dave doesn't want to see whatsoever. But I think that's where the interesting story is. Yeah. But
Like
that's
they can do great stuff against each other. I just don't want to see it.
yeah, and I get that. Yeah,
it just means I'll miss my.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
It'll be great either way. It really will.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. Fabulous.
So I kind of I put the questions. I took all the questions that people sent, and I kind of put them into groups. So like kind of I'm thinking of it now. We're going into like our second wave of questions. So this first wave were all about things that are upcoming, and these ones are all just a little bit more kind of a bit more random, if you like, but quite thought provoking. So asked what is the worst match from your favourite wrestler, specifically in RevPro. I remember on Tuesday, George, you were really struck for an answer for this one. Has anything come to mind since?
Look, I've got an answer, but it's not RevPro. So I'm sorry, Tom. I just live wrestling hits me differently. That even when there's a match where it's like, I don't think I've live. I think I've been lucky enough to see some really great matches, and I don't think there's ever something that I'd consider like as a worst match. And I kind of, where my mind goes is, I don't consider something to be someone's worst match if it was good, if that makes sense. So yeah, I kind of have a thought on this one, and for me, it was recently in AW, Adam Copeland versus Malachi Black, and the reason I've gone with that being my worst match for my favorite wrestler, purely nothing else, is the guy got injured, and I'm a huge Adam Copeland mark, and the fact that I'm no longer going to be hearing his entrance as he comes out at Wembley for a match. Yeah, he might come out for an appearance, but that is going to kill me, and that was what I was really looking forward to.
Before he got injured, did you enjoy the match?
I did, and it's purely the injury. Like, I'm sorry, Tom, this sounds like such a cop-out, mate. It really does sound like a cop-out. I don't like to view wrestling through like a negative lens, and I don't think knowing Tom, he's not trying to be negative with this. But I just don't.
Just loves avoiding questions, doesn't he?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Tom is great in that sense. Like, I forget, I was chatting with someone one day, and we were basically like, you could be having a chat with Tom about chatting a group, and Tom would just turn around and go, right, quickly name me your top five Ultimate Dragon matches. Go. And like that is what Tom's like, and it's great because he does have these really like thought-provoking questions here and there. But yeah, it's one that it's that mind frame where something might jump out at me at one point, but I kind of look at that. Even my favorite wrestlers have bad nights, and we're all human, so I find it really hard to kind of judge that. So that's why I've gone for one where the outcome of it was just a guy's got hurt, and it's a guy that I really enjoy.
I didn't like that match at all, and I know I was really like afraid of like saying that to people because everybody was raving about it. I didn't like it.
I liked it a lot, but you know what? I said it in the group chat today, right? Someone was talking about brother versus brother matches, and they were,
Yeah.
I think it might have been Tom actually raised the same question.
Tom,
So
it was,
yeah,
it was Tom.
cheers, Tom. Yeah. So and then we're talking, and then at first someone was like, "Oh, Edge and Christian," and then we're like, "Oh yeah, they're not brothers." But I'm going to say the controversial. I mean, they've never really had a great match with each other ever. And I know people will talk about this one that they had in AEW, which I think was a lot of fun for them. I thought it was all right, but I thought it was okay for what it was. It relied heavily on smoke and mirrors because of the guys, their ages, and where they were, and that's fine. But yeah, that was the one where I felt for a long time like, oh, I'm a bit scared about saying this one out in public because yeah, that's the one that people love. But before that, as a guy who's loved both of the like Edge is the guy that got me back into wrestling in 1997, 1998. So that was the guy that drew me back in. Edge and Christian were my favourite tag team. Like all of that stuff. But yeah, they've never had a good match against each other. So maybe actually that's my one is Edge versus Christian back in like 2001, 2002 after King of the Ring.
So I can I'll give a more RevPro focused answer, and for once say something negative for a company that I very rarely do. It would be remiss of me not to say two words that I'm not going to need to say anything after this. I'm just going to say two words and I'm going to move on. Hardcore country.
Oh yes, yeah, you might be right there.
But
actually,
that was no fault of any of the three women involved whatsoever. That was just
I'm going to say
a horrible experience.
Dickheads.
Just a horrible experience. Didn't enjoy it at all. And that was literally a crowd ruining a match for me. That was like beach balls. That level of disrespect, because it was just complete ignorance towards what's happening in the ring and just trying to make each other laugh. I hated it.
I think the other thing, Dave, just to add to that, because you said about beach balls and stuff and the disinterest, what got me more with that rather than beach balls, right? Everyone's doing beach balls, yeah, fine. You get people cheering, but because they kept this monotone hardcore country going, there was nowhere for the crowd to build, lift, and drop to. No. And that's where I think that's even worse, because they they just sucked it all out. And I think I've not gone back and watched that match since. And I think that might be the one match that I actually watch with no sound on. And I'd never do that with wrestling matches, because you get the people who do that because they just want to listen to music and they don't think crowds are important. Weirdos. But that might be the one match that I do that with. So yeah, that's a really good shout for RevPro actually, and no fault to the three women.
Devastating for everybody involved as well. Like Alex Windsor deserves so much better than that. High-End deserves so much better than that. And poor Mickie James, she's come over to do an independent date. She doesn't do like independent dates very often. She was a big get. She would have cost a lot of money for RevPro to do that for that match. And I mean, if you were her, would you come back?
No,
I mean, I wouldn't. And also, like, what gets me is that I've heard people before like make jokes being like, "Oh, as long as I don't book Mickie James," it's like it weren't her fault. Like, absolutely, please, Andy Corden, do book Mickie James again. Just for a show where the crowd are actually going to be able to treat her with some respect. Get her in the 229. If somebody made a hardcore country chant in the 229, I think we would just collectively bully them out of the building, because I don't think anyone would stand for it. The other match that I will say, which is actually me being critical of a match, a RevPro match that I really didn't enjoy at all, was from the 10th anniversary. I might have mentioned it on this channel before or another podcast, so I won't plagiarise myself too much, but the strap match between Yota Tsuji and Shota Umino. I loved their match at High Stakes 2022. I loved them working together. I thought it was just masterful, like opening match of a big wrestling show. So I had high expectations for the kind of blow-off match to what had been a really long feud, and I just don't think it worked. I don't like strap matches. I don't mind. I bloody love dog collar matches, and I love like bull rope matches, but the whole four corner thing doesn't feel like the blow off to a blood feud. It feels like a bit of a comedy wrestling kind of match in my eyes, and I didn't enjoy it. I don't think it worked. I wasn't into it at the time, and I've watched it back since to see if maybe, you know, sometimes you're at a wrestling show and, you know, you're feeling a bit tired, you're a bit hungry, and you don't enjoy it as much in the moment as you thought you would, and then you watch it back and you're like, oh, I was just being a grumpy sod. That was brilliant. This wasn't. I didn't enjoy it at the time. I didn't enjoy watching it back. So for me, not that, like, you know, I'm not saying Yota Tsuji or Shota Umino are my favourite wrestler in the world, but that's one time where two people who I really enjoyed watching didn't manage to deliver a match that I enjoyed. I can honestly say all my favourite, like, RevPro wrestlers, and also, like, you know, AEW All In last year, New Japan's Royal Quest shows that I've been to, people have always delivered, like, really, like, entertaining matches. I suppose one that I could mention is Okada versus Bad Dude Tito at Royal Quest 2. Only really because I think there was a part of me that was like, we're getting a big Okada singles match, but it wasn't wrestled like a big Okada singles match. Right, it was wrestled like an Okada singles match. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know, like some people before have said things like sometimes he phones it in a little bit. I don't think he does. I don't believe that. I feel like he is a wrestler who wrestles in gears, and if he doesn't need to get out of third gear to win a wrestling match, he won't. But that's like part of his character. You know, he's not going to go into a 45-minute, you know, the levels he's needed to get into against an Ospreay or an Omega or a Naito to beat Bad Dude Tito, because he doesn't need to, because Bad Dude Tito is not on their level in kayfabe. So I think that was just one where I had higher expectations than was probably appropriate for that match.
Absolutely. Great answers. Thank you for that, Dave. Dave, what I'm going to do is I'm going to maybe bunch the next two questions together a little bit, because since this has been recorded, or we recorded our first time, things have changed as of this morning with the text that you sent me. So we've got a question from S. Weston, who said, could Robbie X challenge for the heavyweight championship in the future? And also from Kyle at Combat Chronicles, what is the significance of the new best junior heavyweight in the world nickname for Robbie X?
So, could Robbie X challenge for the heavyweight championship? Yes. Do I think he will? No. I think he could, in the sense that, you know, there's no reason why he couldn't challenge for that championship. Michael Oku is not heavyweight, so from a storyline point of view, you are allowed to challenge above your weight. We know you can't challenge below it. That was why Samuels had to make weight in order to challenge Conor Mills at the end of last year. We make like a good champion. Like, I mean, he's obviously a very popular guy, as we've seen by the fact that he's wrestling in Arena Mexico, which is no small feat at all. I just don't feel like he will. One, because I feel like there are a lot of people who it makes more sense for to challenge for that championship. We've got to, at some point, have RKJ get a proper title run. We've got to have Luke Jacobs as champion, whether that's after the copper box or further down the field. We've got to have Conor Mills at some point. And then you're thinking about things like, will Zack Sabre Jr. ever be champion again? What about Gabe Kidd? What about Dan Maloney? Like, there's loads of people here and loads of things here. And also, I feel like he's like the face of the cruiserweight division. And so to keep the cruiserweight division as seemingly as important as the heavyweight division, why have him come out of one division to go into the other? In the same way that, like, in AEW, the TNT title is seen as like kind of on a par with the heavyweight title, even though we kind of like, you know, it's not. They present it like it is. So, you know, if Bryan Danielson won the TNT championship but never won the AEW World Championship, that TNT title run could be just as important as a world title run. And when Robbie X was the Cruiserweight champion, every show that he was on defending that championship, he was like an absolute figure point, often in the main event for that. So I don't feel there is a need for it. The nickname, the best junior heavyweight in the world, I think there's two kind of things behind it. One is like a pretty safe answer, and one is a bit of a speculative answer. I think the fact that he was overlooked for the junior heavyweight, the best of the Super Juniors in New Japan again this year, it's definitely something that he would like to do. Like, I know that from talking to him, and like, who wouldn't want to do that? Who wouldn't want to go out and wrestle for New Japan in these tournaments, because they are like the pinnacle of those kind of divisions. Like, any wrestler in RevPro would snap at the chance to go and wrestle in the G1 or the Super Juniors or the World Tag League in New Japan. So I think it's part of it is a little bit of a shot at them for the fact that he got overlooked again. The speculative one is, I wonder if we're going to get a New Japan Royal Quest 4 this year, if it's going to be in October, which is when it ran last year and the year before. Chances are conversations about that have already taken place. The venue's already been booked, and they're now starting to go back and forth between Andy Quilden and New Japan as to what matches will be on that card. And we know from listening to Andy talk about it before that it's very much New Japan will come with a few matches they think they should do. Andy will come with a few matches he thinks they should do, and they kind of meet somewhere in the middle. I know Andy was the driving force behind us getting Ospreay and Zack Sabre Jr. last year. And so very, very grateful for him getting that over the line. And it makes me wonder whether or not he's championing for Robbie X to get a big singles match at Royal Quest 4 against one of the junior heavyweights in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Whether that's Doki for the championship, or whether that's Hiromu or Desperado kind of as the faces of that division. Yeah, really good questions. Like S. Weston, kind of thinking outside the box with could he challenge for the heavyweight title, and yeah, that's where I think that nickname comes from for Combat Chronicles.
Nice. There's not much more I can add to that, really. Like Dave said about the nickname, I kind of thought it could be one of two things. It could be speculative, or it could be a Robbie trying to get himself over thing, which can't blame the guy. It's like a madness to me that he's not been in Best of Super Juniors yet, but we have time. And one of the things you just hit on there about Raw Quest was, I think someone asked that about Raw Quest on the last RevPro Friday questions, and I vaguely remember something like maybe like eyes emoji saying watch this space or something to come soon. So it sounds like it is coming this year. In terms of Robbie at the pinnacle of the company, for me, what I would like to see is I'd like to be able to see a bit more of those, what I say, entertainment skills, right? I don't mean that sounds as WWE as it does, but we talked about Luke, for instance, last time, that we weren't sure whether Luke was a promo guy and could promo, because he just never did it. And then he picked up the mic, it was like, he's actually pretty bloody good at it, isn't he? I'd like to see a bit more of that from whomever goes for the main title. I kind of look at it two ways. I see the cruiserweight title almost a bit more of like the workers' title. And that sounds like such a crazy thing to say about RevPro, because they're all workers, right? They're all really good at what they do. But I can see like the main one is like the epics, the big stories, and you could have that at cruiserweight. But cruiserweight, I can see that as being like, that's the one where Robbie X can go be the face for RevPro over on Royal Quest and stuff. I'm really sure what he's about there. But I am happy for anyone at all on that roster being given the ball and give the chance to run and see if they can run their way up that card, take the main title, and go on and do something with it. All I ever ask is that it makes sense. That's all I want in my booking. Make it make sense. Take me on that journey with you. I'm cool with that.
Yeah, I completely agree, man. As long as it makes sense, and everybody on that roster deserves a crack at it at some point if it makes sense for them, their story and their booking. We're going to finish with a quick fire round of questions, and the final question before those comes from who asks, do you think a tournament like the G1, maybe in a shorter format, is viable? If you factor in the fact that it kind of like the makeup of the crowd will make whether or not this works, it will be quite a significant factor of it. Because if the crowd is considered to be, everybody watches everything that RevPro puts out, then this would work fine. But realistically, I'd imagine there's a hardcore group of people that watch everything. And then there is a group of people that keep in touch with everything. And then there's a group of people that just go to their local wrestling show and enjoy it and don't keep up with the rest. And although all stories are going to be affected by that, and whether or not you pick up on the little subtleties or not, and whether you pick up on the long-term stories, depending on how well invested you are, I'd imagine with the stakes and the point scoring of a tournament, that would be something that's a bit trickier to do if it's going to involve some of the shows where the crowd is a bit more diverse. Whether that is your St. Neots show or your Stevenage show, and how it fits into the calendar with the Queen of the Ring and the J Cup and the Revolution Rumble and the Tag League. Your kind of big four, if you like, kind of York Hall, Crystal Palace type sized shows. Just fitting it all in would I can see why it hasn't happened. I imagine it would be a bit of a logistical nightmare, but I would love for someone to do it and see if it works for an independent company.
Absolutely. Now, the way I think we can make this work in RevPro, and maybe, like you said, like a pared down version, much like Chris said as well. I think in the RevPro calendar, we've got a lot of things going on. We have a lot of the stuff going on with the men. We've got the Tag League. We've got all of that sort of stuff that's going on. But the one thing that we don't have really is a big standout women's thing. And I know we talked about Queen of the Ring earlier, but if you're going to do like G1 style thing, why not give that to the women? That would really set them apart. It takes the kind of stuff we love about a tag league, like the block format, and it gives that to the women and gives them something a bit more. Like, I'm not saying Queen of the Ring's a bad thing to do, but I know that's traditionally been done as like a 1 day tournament. Let's give them something that we can do over multiple shows. I think that would work really well. And we were touching earlier about the fact that we want to see more of the women in RevPro. We want to see more of like the great scene that we've got. Let's do something like this and give them that opportunity. So that would be my pick for what we do going forward. So we've also got a bunch of questions now that we are going to do on a quick fire format. So these are all from Adam. It is putting you in and out, mate. So I think there you go. You're back.
Yeah. Go with it.
Yeah, I was just gonna go with it, and in the edit, if it didn't work, I was just gonna put your face on there and just be like, let's go with it. Cool. So yeah, we've got some questions quick fire questions from Adam Hockendori. So Dave, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna read them to you, then I'll answer them all myself. What was your first live wrestling show?
My first live wrestling show was Progress Chapter 101 in, I think, January of 2020. My wife bought me the Jim Smallman I'm Sorry I Love You book for Christmas. She didn't know who Jim Smallman was. She didn't know what Progress Wrestling was. She literally saw it in Waterstones. It was a wrestling book and thought I'll buy that as a stocking filler for him. And reading it, I realised this guy runs a wrestling promotion. I thought I'll go and watch one of their shows. Really enjoyed it. Never went back to Progress simply because the world shut down and locked down. And then by the time that it was available for me to go back into watching live wrestling, it was Oku and Osprey that drew me in rather than Progress. And then I just fell in love with RevPro.
And so that leads me on to then, what was your first RevPro live show?
High Stakes 2022, Oku and Osprey 2, Aussie Open and Sunshine Machine, Gabe Kidd and Francesco Akira, Yota Tsuji and Shota Umino, Dan Maloney versus Callum Newman, Luke Jacobs versus RKJ, and Alex Windsor versus Charlie Evans. Still remember the card perfectly.
Oh, amazing. So, Dave, you've obviously met a lot of different people across wrestling. What has been your favorite interaction ever with a wrestler?
Oh, great question. I like that. Okay, a couple come to mind. One would be anytime I get to interview a wrestler because it's like unique. Like when you're chatting to people at the merch stand, like everyone's kind of having like a fairly similar conversation and stuff like that. That's what they're there to do. But when I get to interview somebody, I feel like I get like a new level of closeness in terms of being able to ask questions that I've had time to prepare or that I've had time to think. Or I love it when, really, if I'm being honest, when I do an interview, I don't prepare an awful lot because I like to just ask the first couple of questions and then just see where the conversation goes, and I really enjoy that. Um, a couple of others that come to mind are being lost in Birmingham and bumping into Will Ospreay and Alex Windsor, who were also lost in Birmingham trying to find the mill where RevPro ran last year, and we ended up walking to the venue together, which was really unique and weird. And it was probably the most awkward wrestler interaction I've had, but a special one that I'll always remember. But I think my favourite, it's a bit of a sad one. The Mad Kurt like tribute show that effectively seasons beatings at the end of last year turned into in St Neots was really heavy, like a really difficult show to attend as a fan. And I have my little girls with me, so that kind of extra hard because it's a lot of talk about death at Christmas time when they're in like their happiest of moods. And the show was great, and they handled the situation brilliantly, but it was very emotional. There was a lot of wrestlers in tears and stuff, and that's something that I've never seen and they've never seen. Um, but at the end of the show, Kanji came out and she came and found us, and she gave my girls the biggest cuddle. She gave me a massive cuddle. You realise how tiny she is when you're like 6'1" and you're giving her a cuddle. But that was like really special to me because it's like she wasn't doing merch or anything like that. She wasn't coming out for any other reason. She specifically came out and came and looked for us. I love that. I've got loads of time for Kanji. She's an absolute superstar. As a performer, but also as a human as well. So I think that's probably my favourite.
I love that. Yeah, that transcends everything about kind of what we like about wrestling and just makes that a bit more real, doesn't it? And kind of then going on to the last one, we've just been talking about things that are real. We're going to talk about dreams now. Adam also wants to know who is your one dream guest wrestler to appear on RevPro that has never appeared, and who's their opponent?
Oh, it's got to be Brian Danielson. Um, he's my modern day Bret Hart. Bret Hart was my favourite wrestler of all time as a child. Grew up watching him. He was like my goat. And then Danielson's like the modern day version of that. So Danielson, and if it was like a massive show and a dream opponent, it would be Zack Sabre Jr. If it was someone we're talking about from like the regular, like to like RevPro roster now, the people that we see week in week out, it'd be Conor Mills.
Love that. Excellent. Cool. Well, thank you, Adam, for those ones. So, flipping that back round then. So, yeah, my first live wrestling show ever was 1993, I think it was, at Corby Leisure Centre or Guildhall or whatever the fuck it was called, Festival Hall. That's what I'm looking for, where the British Bulldog appeared on his out of WWF era. Let's just call it that. And I remember my friend being. His dad stumped up the £5 for paying for the Polaroid, which my dad still to this day goes, I can't believe he was charging £5 for that. It's like, yeah, can tell my dad's Scottish, can't you? But yeah, that was great. My first kind of show as an adult properly was the first ever Raw taping in Manchester 2004. That was incredible. I thought it was great because, well, one, we got the tickets by my mum being on the telephone. So that doesn't happen these days. You don't call the venue for tickets. You get on Ticketmaster, and that didn't work. But then she was on the phone trying to actually phone them up. That was great until I was like, yeah, I've got floor tickets. I'm in row U or row W or something like that. And then you get there and you go, oh, okay. You learn the lesson about floor seats very quickly. And then my first ever indie show was 1PW up in Doncaster, which really kind of showed me how different indie wrestling was in a lot of ways. The main way being that people will charge you for autographs and pictures at that point when they're all import wrestlers. And a lot of them were very gracious to me as a 21-year-old and didn't ask me for money. Some like Austin Aries, if you took a picture of him just sitting at his table, would stand up in front of the whole room and call you a motherfucker. Saw that happen with my own eyes because you were taking money off his table, apparently. And then you had guys like Samoa Joe who were literally just walking around as if it was a convention, just taking pictures of people. And that was the moment my opinion on Samoa Joe changed completely because I thought he was a real dick. But again, 21-year-old me, character taking over. But yeah, I've got so many stories on that I'll share one day because there's just too many to go through now. My first ever live RevPro show was 2014, and that was at Southampton Guildhall. What got me there was the poster had Bret the Hitman Hart on it. It had John Morrison on it. I'm like, this is cool. This is a bit different. Let's go and see what this is all about. I was waiting outside and everyone was like cheering this young guy that was coming in. And I was like, oh, he seems like a big deal with the crowd. And they were going, yeah, hi, Will, how you doing? And it was like, obviously a 2014 Will Ospreay, who at that point, very new into his career. And I walk into the venue and I look at the merch table and I was like, oh, I know that guy. That guy's Ricochet. I know who he is. And this is like a really small area, like your Southampton 1865 kind of merch area. That's what it was like there. And then then I watched Will Ospreay versus Ricochet in my very first Rev Pro show. So that could come full circle in AEW, and that would be crazy that I've seen at Southampton Guildhall and Wembley if that happened. So yeah, that was great. Tommaso Ciampa was on the card. Bret Hart came out and put the sharpshooter on someone. Yeah. We'll never know who because the footage has been lost to time. But all I remember when I said to Will Ospreay that I was at that show, his face was like, oh, the one we don't have the footage for anymore, or the one we can't show the footage. And I was like, what is involved in that? And then Andy Quildan just told me they lost the USB stick. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. Favorite RevPro match of all time that I've been live for. I am going to take away the Michael Oku versus Will Ospreay 3. Because of course that's the cheat codes. The other ones I'm going to throw in there would be from last year's anniversary show, Ishii versus Luke Jacobs. I knew coming into that, as soon as I got announced, I said to my wife, that has got potential to be match of the night. Even by my lofty expectations, it fully succeeded. And I know people love Shingo versus Will, and I thought it was great. For me, Shingo and Will didn't match the heights that Ishii and Luke got me to. But then, to be fair, if you did it the other way around, maybe I'd be that bit more spent for that match as well. So that was just right place, right time for that match. And yes, that's probably my favorite Rev Pro match that I've been live for. Favorite interactions ever with wrestlers? I'm going to quick fire a couple of them because I've just got too many. Edge, when he was at Comic-Con, he was talking to me about a t-shirt I was wearing. I think it was the band Machine Head. And he was like, we've got this picture, which if I've got it, I'll flash it up on the screen anytime now. And we're both like smiling, but through the gritted teeth, we're having a conversation about it. And I'm going, I don't know if it is Machine Head. And he goes, well, it looks like it. And we're back and forth in this very small moment. And I've met him another time where I was at an Inside the Rope show, and me being the edge mark that I am, made sure I was there super early to be first one in line. And I had the VIP package to meet him. And I got almost like a full 5 minutes just chatting with him. And we were just like bantering back and forth like we knew each other. It was really cool. And it's one of those occasions where I was like, do meet your heroes because they can be fucking cool. AJ Styles was another one for me. When I got to his merch line at said 1PW show, I was like, I'm really sorry, I don't have any money. I'll just come back another time. And he took the picture I had, and I remember it was a trophy. And I think it was some competition in RevPro, not RevPro, Ring of Honor that he'd won. And he was like, oh yeah, this was this. And he was so cool about it and signed it all for me. And he was like, do you want to get a picture? I was like, no, I'll get it next time. I'll pay for it next time. And he was really cool about it. And I was like, that just stuck with me about how someone could just do something that was so really cool. When you talk about RevPro, people like Michael Oku, who I had the chance to tell him how much the Oku Osprey 1 match meant to me, because I was there for that match. I kind of knew who he was, but didn't know much about him. And that match was what turned me into fully on to RevPro. Like, that just did it for me. I was like, wow, this is amazing. So good in this kind of venue. Like, this shows me, I'm going to say it, pro wrestling at its best. That's what it was for me that night. But overall, my favorite one, and it's going to be a bit of a controversial wrestler, and I get it, but the moment in the time was just too good. It was Ric Flair at 1PW. So if you imagine the 229 and kind of where like Francesca comes out and the wrestlers come out, that sort of area is where you were standing in the queue, and by the bar is where Ric Flair was, and everyone will take their turn at going over to him. They'd walk across, he'd shake their hand, he'd say, "Nice to meet you," all of that sort of stuff, take the picture. I was wearing a DX jersey, and as soon as I started walking, he just clocked it, and he started jumping up and down, crotch chopping me, like on the spot, wooing at the top of his voice until I went over there, and then greeted me like we were old friends. It was the craziest wrestling interaction that I've ever had. And yeah, obviously, look, there's a lot of real life stuff where people are uneasy about Ric Flair, and yeah, I get that. But in terms of just how out of this world that was for me, that was crazy. And then I've even got some stories like I ended up being involved in the after hours lock in for Mickey James's album release party when she was in TNA, which was like about 10 of us after all the punters went. We were all there together for a good few hours. That was really cool. I've managed to get a compliment off of Bret Hart about my Bryan Danielson t-shirt I was wearing when everyone else was just getting a smile and a handshake. And I pissed Chris Jericho off because he was going to take a picture with me and I didn't have my camera ready, which if you ever listen to Talk is Jericho, he talks about how he hates that. And I'll post this picture up, but it's a really nice picture of Chris looking like scowling at me, and me just being really happy because I've met Chris Jericho. So yeah, those are a lot of the good ones I've had there. And the last one, dream guest wrestler to appear on RevPro that has never appeared and their opponent. Well, when Summer Sizzler was rumoured, I say rumoured, they were kind of hinting something was coming, and then kind of came out. I straight away said to Dave, I think it's Bryan Danielson. And I don't know what, that's who I thought it was. This was before the Ricochet stuff started coming out a bit more. And I'm thinking that's probably who it's going to be. But Danielson being in his final year of wrestling, listening to his book about how much the UK scene means to him. All I'm going to say, guys, is as much as I'd love to see it, part of me doesn't want it to happen. Like, part of me does, part of me doesn't because of Mr. Mark here, because I would hate for him to not get to see that. That would suck. But if you'll give me that,
honestly,
yeah,
my wife and I would have to have a serious conversation about whether or not I just don't go on holiday with the kids and her, or at least I arrive late.
You arrive late. Yeah.
But I think Danielson is like the one wrestler.
Yeah.
I think he's like the only wrestler I can think of where I would be in a very difficult position. Let's just say.
I get that. I also think Ricochet is going to be on that card as well. But if you ask me who I think he's going to go against, the first thing that I thought of was Danielson versus Nigel McGuinness. They've been playing that up too much for it to not happen. I thought it was going to happen at Wembley. That made sense. Unless it happens at Wembley next year. But I'm not even convinced that they're coming back to Wembley next year, if I'm honest. I could see them not doing that next year. So it feels like now or never to do it in the UK. And there is part of me thinking that is going to be the match for some Sizzler. I'm probably very wrong here, and it's going to be Ricochet, and it's going to be wonderful. But if you're picking for me to pick someone for Bryan Danielson in RevPro, we all know who I'm going to say here, Zazaya.
That would be awesome.
There is another cheat code. Oh.
So I'm gonna before we do our final question each, there's a couple of things that you said that made me think of some bits. So I used to also have a Machine Head t-shirt. A man of good musical tastes is my my cromulent fellow George. But my machine head t-shirt had 3 Japanese symbols on it.
Mm-hmm.
3 Chinese, no, it was 3 Chinese symbols, sorry, because I went into my local Chinese takeaway and the woman behind the till was just like, do you know what your t-shirt says? I was like, no. I was just thinking, like, oh my God, is it like something really offensive or something like that? And she was like, it doesn't make any sense. I was like, oh, what does it say? She said, well, she said it's in syllables. So it's machine head. I'm like, yeah, that's it. That's cool. Like, good. That's what it's meant to say.
Yeah.
Like, just the panic of her, like, being like, oh my God, is it like a really offensive t-shirt? I never knew.
Love that.
There's 2 more wrestler interactions. One which is the most random of all, and one which is the most awkward of all. I have discovered, completely accidentally, that a number of wrestlers that drive south home from Sheffield stop at the same services that I stop at to get food on the way home. So last time out in Sheffield, Leighton Buzzard, Danny Jones, and Brendan White all came in. But another time, like literally half the roster came in, from Francesca and Oscar Hardin to Nico Angelo. The Greedy Souls were there. Mills was there. Loads and loads of people were there. And Chuck Mambo came and sat next to me in McDonald's whilst he was waiting for his food to come and chatted to me about RevPro while I was eating my Big Mac. And that was like such like a funny little story. And then the other one is that I owe Great O'Khan a tenner. Because when Great O'Khan was RevPro champion at York Hall, I asked him for a photo and he was like, yeah, sure. And literally, as I'm getting my phone out to take it, he was like, £10, right? And at that moment, I'm just sort of like too socially awkward to like say anything. I'm just like, yeah, sure. Like, I'll pay £10 for the photo. I probably wouldn't have beforehand, but yeah, what am I going to do? Be like, oh, no, I'm not paying that, and go away. So we take the photo, and then I get my card out, and he was like, no, cash. And I'm like, I don't have any cash. I only have my card. And he just looked at me kind of confused, and I was like, well, thank you. And just shook his hand and went. He was like, well, what else am I going to do? I can't pay you for it. I can't leave and come back in. And it's just, and I kind of thought to myself, one day when Great O'Khan is on a RevPro show or at Royal Quest, if he's on merch, I'm just going to go and give him a tenner and just say, I owe you it. Thank you very much.
This is why I really do wish wrestlers would put like prices. If they want to charge for photos, I've got no problem with that. But please just put them on your table so that we know, because I'm much like you, socially awkward, and I'll go, yeah, okay, I will pay that. And I got caught out with the same thing with Santana at Progress recently, thinking, I'm going to get a picture with him. And he's like, I can't take card. I don't have PayPal. I don't have any of this, cash only. And it's like, I don't have cash. And it was basically like, at that point, it was, and this isn't me dissing the guy at all, but it was basically like, oh, well, then no one can get pictures. And it's like, oh, okay, fine. So he was happy to chat to people, but it would not take a picture. And I was just like,
how much does he charge you for pictures? Do you know?
A tenner for a picture. But I kind of, these guys that have been in like an AEW and who don't really do the indies all that much anymore, I kind of expect them to charge, and I was half expecting it, so I was like, okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, when
do you know
he was
about,
like,
do you know about when Matt Cardona came to Progress?
No.
So when Matt Cardona came to Progress, he one of my friends, shout out to Sly Sai on Twitter.
I knew that's what you were going to say.
He queued for a photo with Matt Cardona, and only as he was getting the photo, he realised it was 30 quid for a photo with him.
Oh, that doesn't shock me with Cardona. Absolutely.
Like 30 quid to take a photo, like at the merch stand with your own phone, like proper heel work. Heel work from
but the thing is, Cardona, like, he is the guy that out there, he will say, I'm charging for everything. And you know what? He's the one person that he doesn't really do it for me, right? He's that guy that even as Zack Ryder, and I had to fucking sit there at WrestleMania 32 while he won the title. I was just like, all these are options I'd have preferred to have seen. Okay, cool. But you know what? He's found his niche, and his niche is how much money can I make? And yeah, fair play to the
I
guy.
mean,
Like,
look at the dude's swimming pool. He's doing all right for himself.
he's doing absolutely doing all right for himself. So, oh god, yeah, that haven't heard that one, but that doesn't surprise me. But I kind of respect it because if there's anyone you know who is gonna, when I say gouge fans, that sounds really like bad and predatory, and I don't mean it. Just the one who's just gonna try and make as much money as he can. It's Cardo.
Yeah, yeah.
Fair play to him.
So we said we'd finish with one question for each other. So I've got a question for George that I won't answer, but he will, and George's got a question for me that I'll answer and he won't. We'll call it a day there. So George, the question I've got, mate, is you are someone who is kind of as big a mark as I am when it comes to RevPro. So it kind of draws me to the question of like, why wrestling? Of all the sports and all the art forms that are out there, why wrestling?
Yeah, I like this question a lot, and I like my sports, right? So I watch football, I watch American football as well, and I watch some other bits and bobs here and there. So I like what you can get from sports with these big stories and how it makes you feel, right? And sometimes they're once in a lifetime things, and that's great. But with wrestling, it's kind of there's a lot of it. For me, when I was younger, it was like real fun, right? That's what it was. It was fun. It was big entertainment. I watched it with my dad. You got all these superheroes. That's what did it for me. And the older I got, like when I got to Attitude Era, it was all cool stuff that no one was doing, like Edge and Christian, the Hardys. Like, everyone loved The Rock and Steve Austin. I can. This is not me trying to be cool, like a cool 15-year-old. I didn't like them. I really didn't like them because I just thought, oh, all that is this. And I really liked what the guys were doing in like the tag teams and stuff like that. So for me, that's what my thing was in WWF at that time. It was the tag teams. It was Kurt Angle. That's where I was. Even Jericho. I wasn't really a Jericho fan, but you give me those guys, Eddie Guerrero. They were all fun, and they were all doing a very similar kind of style. That was something I really liked. There was character work, and there was a style. The older I've gotten, it's about emotion. Wrestling, when it's done right, can make you feel a lot of things. It can make you feel happy, sad. It can just get the adrenaline going, as we spoke about when Zazea pinned Luke Jacobs, and we just got out of our seat, like instinctively did that. The amount of times I've sat there just gone, "What the fuck?" Like it just grabs me, and it does it in a way as well that watching on TV doesn't really do for me anymore. Right? It used to. It doesn't now. I find it really hard going to events. That's where it like really grabs me. But it's the emotion, and when a show is done well, and it can take you up on that the valleys and all of that, and you're at the end of it going, "My God, what a show that was!" That's what I love about wrestling. Man United 1999 treble will be the greatest sporting moment I will ever live through, unless somehow Scotland beat England 1-0 extra time in the World Cup final, which is never going to happen. But when it comes to when you take that aside and what that meant to me and how that made me feel from sports, wrestling can do that so much more, so much more regularity as well, and that's why I love it.
Love that, mate. Absolutely love that.
Excellent. So, Dave, the question I've had for you is: you mentioned earlier about obviously the amount of shows that RevPro do, right? So about 40 hours a year and something like that. So you go to a lot of shows, right? How has attending so many of these shows changed or affected you as a person? And how have you grown from going to so many shows, and what's it done for you just in the day to day?
Yes, it's a deep question that I like. So for context, RevPro of I can't remember what it is. I had it the other day. We're on like 20, 21 shows, something like that for this year so far. And I've so far I didn't fly out to Barcelona, and I missed one Sheffield show. And I missed the Sheffield show because it was the night before my wife's granddad's funeral. So she was doing funeral stuff with her mum and her nan, and I was looking after the kids. Every other show I've been to. Between now and the end of the year, I know that I'm missing Summer Sizzler, and that is the only show I anticipate on missing between now and the end of the year. So I'm hoping that if RevPro do 45 shows, I'm not flying out to Germany, I might add. If RevPro do 45 shows, I'm hoping I would have attended 40 of them live.
Yeah.
So for me, I like wrestling is my true escapism. So I've got ADHD, and I think one of the things I struggle with, I don't think I struggle with it because I quite like it. It's quite convenient to my life. But one kind of negative to it is the fact that I find it very difficult to concentrate on any one thing at a time. I mean, even watching me on this podcast, you'll probably notice just how much I like fidget and I find it quite difficult to be like present in the moment for anything other than wrestling. Like if this was a podcast on anything else, I wouldn't be able to do it because I can't talk about anything other than wrestling for this amount of time. And like I like films. I consider myself a Star Wars fan. I love the Lord of the Rings films. I love the Harry Potter films. I love all sorts of stuff like that. But none of those things are an escapism for me. They're just something to look at, something to do, something to just kind of fill my day with. Whereas when I go and watch wrestling live, I'm completely locked into it. And I know I take loads of photos there, and that probably helps me because that's like my kind of 90% of my brain is on watching what's in front of me, and the 10% that I can never like have on the exact same thing will be on taking photos. And what will happen is if I'm watching something at home, it will be 90% watching the thing on the telly and 10% doing something else. But that 10% sometimes will become 15%, 20%, 50%. And then I'll miss bits that are in whatever I'm watching. And live wrestling doesn't do that for me. So for me, it's like this real kind of escape. It gives me something to look forward to every week. Again, I suffer from depression, and I need things to look forward to in my life, and wrestling gives me that. I've got this constant and also like when we have weeks like this week where there isn't a wrestling show, I quite like that because it's like I need a bit of a brace because I'm knackered from doing. I manage 13 people in a school with 1,300 kids that I'm responsible for, and I've got a busy life that way. I've got 3 kids at home and a wife. I've got mortgage to pay, bills to pay, all that nonsense. And then like wrestling's like my thing that I can look forward to at the end of each week. And then when I don't have a week where there's wrestling, I get to actually properly have a rest. And in terms of like you said something about like, growing as a person, it's definitely made me more confident because I think I've always come across as a bit of a like confident person socially, but this sounds horrible, but it's probably because I don't care that much. So like if you like me or you don't like me, I don't really care. If you're nice, I'm nice. Like I will always be lovely to people, but I also have no issue whatsoever with just like you don't like me, that's cool. Why you don't need to like me. Not everyone needs to like everybody. So I've always probably come across more confident than I am because of that kind of like just lack of kind of caring, I suppose, of like social interaction. But wrestling, I've made so many friends from wrestling, like genuine friends, because we've got this amazing thing in common. Like we would never have met if it wasn't for wrestling. Like I could reel off like a dozen people who I never would have met if it weren't for wrestling. And that's like a lovely part of it. And getting to go around the country, like, when I come down to Southampton and, you're there in Southampton and there's a good group of people, I won't name them all, but like, there's a good group of people there. They all know who they are. Like we all hang out together for the day and it's lovely. I'm starting to get that a little bit when I go up to Sheffield. There's like a couple of people that I spend the day with, like the afternoon with when I go up there. We've got it whenever we go to London. Like that's like a really lovely thing. And I kind of feel like I've found my people and I've found like I found a place where I can be completely myself and be completely true to myself and not kind of feel the need to either hide it or just make boring small talk. There's never boring small talk at the wrestling because you can talk about wrestling. You know, we're not like standing there in the queue asking each other about how work's going. We're standing there in the queue asking each other, you know, what's the best ever brother versus brother wrestling match? Like that's, you know, that's probably like what I've got from it the most, which I've really enjoyed.
Amazing. You know what? That's a really lovely one to end on, because that's what it's about. Real life is what it's about. Like, we love the wrestling, but actually what it's done there. And I can say the same. The community that we've got down in Southampton is brilliant. And yeah, let's not name them all, because someone will get salty that we've left him out. He knows who he is, and he's probably going to be loving that he's just got an inverted shout out there. Dave, this has been fun. For those of you watching and listening, thank you so much for getting involved. I'm just going to peel behind the curtain a little bit now. As I mentioned at the start of the episode, we had some technical issues where I basically muted Dave for the entirety of the last episode. It went really well. Tonight, we are on Thursday night. It is 10 to 10. Looking at the time, I've just looked at it. We have been plagued by audio issues all night. In fact, there's been I think I've got like 4 separate video files that I've had to stop and restart. We don't know what's caused it, so I do apologise if some of it seems a bit higgledy-piggledy, or you just get random cuts between scenes and whatever. Apologies. We're doing the best we can with what we've got, and if it wasn't for the fact that it was such a good bunch of questions that we were given and we really liked doing it the first time, we probably would have just sacked it off an hour ago and just been like, we're going to have to cancel. So thank you so much for bearing with it. Dave, thank you so much for your time, mate. Guys, down the bottom of the screen, you will see this lovely little ticker. I'm not going to spend all the time reading out all the different handles. But as you know, you can always head to davethemark.com every day, whether it's something new that's coming out or whether it's just to read something that Dave's written. There's plenty there for you. Dave, my friend, until next week, we are out of here.
Cheers, man. Thank you.